Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're going microscopic, diving into the world of bacteria. We think we know them, right? They're germs. But there's so much more to these tiny organisms than meets the eye, huh?
Absolutely. Bacteria are often demonized, totally. But the truth is we literally wouldn't exist without them. It's true. They play a critical role in everything from the food we eat to the air we breathe. They're like the ultimate multitaskers of the living world.
Okay, so before we get into all the ways bacteria shape our world, let's start with the basics. Remind me, what exactly defines a bacterium?
Well, bacteria are unicellular. So they're single-celled organisms, but here's the key difference. They're prokaryotes.
Okay.
Unlike us eukaryotes with our DNA all neatly organized within a nucleus, bacteria don't have that membrane-bound compartment.
So where do they keep their genetic blueprint? It's not just floating around willy-nilly, is it?
Not exactly. Their DNA is concentrated in a region called the nucleoid, but it's not enclosed within a membrane like our nucleus. And get this, they usually have just one single circular chromosome that carries all their genetic information. Talk about efficiency.
Wow, that's incredible. So
Yeah.
we've established that bacteria are small and efficient, but I'm curious, how do scientists even begin to classify these microscopic organisms? I mean, where do you even start?
It's a fascinating process. It actually relies on their genetic makeup, specifically those unique rRNA sequences.
Okay.
Based on these sequences and other characteristics, scientists group all living organisms into 6 kingdoms. 2 of these kingdoms, Archaebacteria and Eubacteria, encompass all bacteria.
Okay, 2 kingdoms just for bacteria. There must be some pretty significant differences between these groups. Tell me more.
You're right, there are some key distinctions, particularly in where they thrive and how they're built.
Hmm.
Archaebacteria, as their name suggests, are ancient, including some of the oldest life forms on Earth.
Right.
They have unique adaptations that allow them to survive in incredibly extreme environments.
Like what?
Places like super salty lakes, boiling hot springs, even environments without oxygen, which would be deadly to you and me.
That's mind-blowing. These archaebacteria sound like something out of a science fiction novel.
They're amazing.
So what about the, I guess, regular bacteria, the ones we encounter more frequently? That's where the eubacteria come in, right?
Exactly. Eubacteria are the ones we typically think of when we hear the word bacteria. They're incredibly diverse and found everywhere in the soil, water, air, and even inside us. You've probably heard of cyanobacteria, for example. They're the blue-green algae that sometimes pop up in lakes and ponds.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing some eubacteria are responsible for those not-so-pleasant infections we sometimes experience. So how do we go from these seemingly simple organisms existing everywhere to causing, like, a sore throat or something even more serious?
That's a great segue. It's all about the fascinating and sometimes unnerving ways bacteria have adapted to interact with their environment, including us.
So we've got this massive, diverse group of bacteria called eubacteria, kind of sharing our world. Makes you wonder, how have they become so successful at surviving, even thriving in so many different environments?
It all comes down to adaptations,
Oh.
those unique features and mechanisms that have allowed bacteria to basically conquer virtually every corner of our planet. Some of these adaptations are absolutely remarkable.
Okay, so give me an example. What's one of these incredible bacterial survival tactics?
Okay, let's talk about endospores.
Okay.
Certain types of bacteria, especially those living in soil, have this incredible ability to form what are essentially dormant, highly resistant spores
Yeah.
when, conditions get tough.
Wow.
Like imagine a bacterium going into a state of suspended animation, like wrapping itself in this like almost indestructible armor.
Wow. So they essentially, what, just hit the pause button on life until things improve? What triggers them to come out of this dormant state?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. These endospores can withstand extreme temperatures, radiation, even harsh chemicals that would wipe out most other life forms. And they can remain viable for incredibly long periods.
Well, how long are we talking?
Some even for thousands of years.
What?
When conditions become favorable again, like when nutrients become available, the endospore can germinate, reactivating the bacterium inside.
Oh, wow. That's an incredible adaptation for survival. I'm starting to think we humans could learn a thing or two from bacteria.
Right.
Yeah.
They certainly have a lot to teach us about resilience. And speaking of adaptations, let's not forget those pili we talked about earlier.
Right.
They're not just for sticking to surfaces, they're also involved in a process called conjugation.
Conjugation. Okay, that sounds complicated. What happens during conjugation?
It's actually a fascinating way that bacteria can, share genetic information with each other.
Okay.
Think of it like bacterial sex, but instead of creating offspring, they're swapping genes. One bacterium uses its pilus to connect with another bacterium, forming a bridge, and then it transfers a copy of its DNA.
So they're like sharing blueprints.
Exactly.
That's amazing. But also, I mean, that sounds like a recipe for trouble, right? Like
Mm.
if one bacterium has a gene for like antibiotic resistance, it can quickly spread that resistance to others through conjugation.
That's exactly right.
Yeah,
It's one of the reasons why antibiotic resistance is such a significant concern.
right.
Bacteria are incredibly adaptable, and they can quickly share those adaptations with each other,
Yeah.
even across different species. It's like survival of the fittest, microscopic addition.
Right, right. This is all so fascinating, but also a little unsettling. It's like we're in this constant arms race with these microscopic organisms.
In a way, we are. And that brings us to the crucial role of antibiotics.
Right, antibiotics, the miracle drugs that have like revolutionized medicine, but as we've seen, their overuse has led to the rise of antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
Yeah.
It feels like such a delicate balance. We need these drugs, but we also need to use them responsibly to ensure they remain effective.
You've hit the nail on the head. Antibiotics are powerful tools for fighting bacterial infections, but understanding how they work and how bacteria fight back is essential for using them effectively.
Okay, so let's break it down. What exactly are antibiotics and how do they target bacteria?
At their core, antibiotics are chemicals that either kill bacteria, those are bactericidal, or stop them from growing and multiplying, those are bacteriostatic. And what's fascinating is that many antibiotics are actually produced naturally by other microorganisms like fungi and bacteria themselves.
So it's like a microscopic arms race with microorganisms battling it out for resources and survival.
Precisely. And we've learned to leverage those naturally occurring antibiotics for our own benefit. Penicillin, for example, one of the most well-known antibiotics, is produced by a type of mold.
That's incredible. So how does penicillin actually work to fight off bacterial infections?
Penicillin belongs to a class of antibiotics called beta-lactams,
Okay.
and they work by targeting peptidoglycan, which, if you remember, is a crucial component of bacterial cell walls.
Right.
Beta-lactams interfere with the enzymes that build and maintain the cell wall, essentially weakening the bacterium's armor.
Ah, so it's like taking down a fortress by targeting its walls.
Exactly.
That makes sense. That makes sense. But I'm guessing bacteria have developed ways to fight back against these attacks?
Unfortunately, they have.
So bacteria have their own defenses, like ways of evolved to resist even our most potent antibiotics. What's happening at a microscopic level when bacteria become resistant? Like how does that even work?
It's a fascinating and concerning example of natural selection in action.
Yeah.
Imagine you have a population of bacteria, and a few have, random mutations in their genes that make them less susceptible to a particular antibiotic. When you introduce that antibiotic, it wipes out the susceptible bacteria. But those with the resistance mutation, they survive.
It's like they're the superheroes who survived the villain's attack, and now they're left to rebuild, but this time with a shield.
Exactly. And those survivors reproduce, passing on their resistance genes to their offspring. Over time, that resistance mutation becomes more common in the population. That's how you end up with strains of bacteria like MRSA methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus that are resistant to multiple antibiotics.
Oh, wow. Okay, so that explains how resistance develops, but what can we do about it? I mean, it's not like we can just stop using antibiotics altogether. They're essential for treating serious bacterial infections.
You're right, we can't just abandon antibiotics, they're lifesavers. But we need to be much more judicious in how we use them. Part of the solution is reducing unnecessary antibiotic use. Antibiotics only work against bacteria, not viruses, yet they're often prescribed for viral infections like colds or the flu. That just adds to the selective pressure, giving bacteria more opportunities to develop resistance.
Yeah, it's like we're inadvertently training our microscopic enemies to become stronger every time we use antibiotics unnecessarily. So what else can we do? Are scientists working on, like, developing new types of antibiotics?
They are, but it's a challenging and expensive process. It's a bit of a race against time. Bacteria are constantly evolving, so we need to stay one step ahead. Some researchers are exploring new ways to target bacteria, like using viruses called bacteriophages, which infect and kill bacteria. Others are investigating ways to disarm bacteria rather than kill them, making them less likely to develop resistance.
Wow, that's fascinating. It's amazing to think that the solutions to some of our biggest health challenges might be found by studying the tiniest organisms on Earth. So, what's the takeaway for our listeners today? What can they do in their everyday life to be a part of the solution, not the problem?
It's about being informed and proactive. Talk to your doctor about whether antibiotics are truly necessary when they're prescribed. And if you are prescribed antibiotics, make sure to take the full course as directed, even if you start feeling better. Not completing the course can allow those partially resistant bacteria to survive and multiply.
Right. It's about being a responsible antibiotic steward. And it goes beyond like personal choices too. We can all advocate for responsible antibiotic use in agriculture and other industries. It's a collective effort.
Absolutely. Our microscopic world is full of wonder, but it's also a delicate balance. By understanding the fascinating adaptations of bacteria, the importance of responsible antibiotic use, and the constant interplay between our actions and microbial evolution, we can appreciate the complexity of this invisible world we share and work towards a healthier future for all.
Well said. And for those of you eager to dive deeper into this captivating world of bacteria, this is just the beginning. We've only scratched the surface of these microscopic marvels, and there's a universe of knowledge out there waiting to be explored.
It's true. Keep that curiosity alive and never stop questioning the world around you, even, or perhaps especially, the parts we can't see.
Perfectly said. And on that note, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of bacteria. Until next time, keep exploring.